Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Dr. Ruben. How are you doing?
Good.
Good morning, Ayo. And good morning, Rufai.
Morning.
All righty, let me tell you what's happening around the world. Unfortunately, we start with some heartbreaking news out of the United States. A commercial airplane with 60 passengers and 4 crew members on board has collided mid-air with a Black Hawk helicopter as the jet was approaching a runway at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. The accident happened as the jet, operated by regional carrier PSA Airlines on behalf of American Airlines, was attempting to land just before 9 p.m. local time on Wednesday. Now, radar tracking sites show the passenger jet appears to have fallen into the frigid Potomac River. This is still a developing story, and we will bring you updates as and when we get them. We do know, however, though, that they have been able to retrieve some parts of the plane. And when you see those images, you'll see that the plane was recovered so close to the airport. You can actually see the airport in the picture of the plane that they're recovering. At this point, no survivors have been recovered, and authorities say that this is now a recovery situation more so than looking for survivors, but we are, of course, keeping all of our hopes open. Now, moving on and staying in the United States, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., President Donald Trump's controversial selection to run the Department of Health and Human Services, ended his first of 2 expected days of confirmation hearings before the Senate committees. Also on Wednesday, now for more than 3 hours, Kennedy Jr. faced questions about his position on vaccines, abortion, and other major healthcare issues. He's been critical of vaccines for years and founded the Children's Health Defense, which is an anti-vaccine group. Now, in public statements, Kennedy has repeatedly said that he is not anti-vaccine. Meanwhile, former Vice President Mike Pence and his conservative advocacy group have raised concerns about Kennedy's past support for abortion. Now, in a very colorful exchange with Senator Michael Bennet of Colorado, RFK Jr. was confronted on his controversial comments. Let's take a listen.
Mike, did you say that COVID-19 was a genetically engineered bioweapon that targets black and white people but spared Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese people?
I didn't say it was deliberately targeted. I just quoted an NIH-funded and NIH published study.
Did you say Lyme disease is a highly likely militarily engineered bioweapon?
I probably did say that.
Did you say that?
And that's what the developer of Lyme
I want
disease
all of our
said.
colleagues to hear it, Mr. Kennedy. I want them to hear it. You said yes. Did you say that exposure to pesticides causes children to become transgender?
No, I never said that.
Okay, I have the record that I'll give to the chairman, and he can make his judgment. Did you write in your book, and it's undeniable, that African AIDS is an entirely different disease from Western AIDS? Yes or no, Mr. Kennedy?
I'm not sure if I made that.
Okay, I'll give it to the chairman, Mr. Kennedy. And my final question, did you say on a podcast, and I quote, "I wouldn't leave abortion, to the states. My belief is we should leave it to the woman. We shouldn't have the government involved, even if it's full term." Did you say that, Mr. Kennedy?
Senator, I believe that every abortion is a tragedy.
Did you say it, Mr. Kennedy? This
believe
matters. It doesn't matter what you come here and say that isn't true, that's not reflective of what you really believe, that you haven't said over decade after decade after decade, because unlike other jobs we're confirming around this place, this is a job where it is life and death.
Well, very shocking questions and answers there. Now, Kennedy may likely have a narrow path to securing his HHS post. If all Senate Democrats vote against his nomination, Kennedy can only afford to lose 3 Republican votes in order to be confirmed. Now, moving on, in his latest policy push against illegal migrants, U.S. President Donald Trump says he will sign an executive order directing the Department of Defense and the Department of Homeland Security to prepare a 30,000-person migrant facility at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Now, if it sounds familiar, a reminder that Guantanamo Bay is a naval base known for housing suspected terrorists in the wake of 9/11 attacks, alongside allegations of torture and abuse.
You see, anyway, I have said I will adopt a position. I will just sit back and enjoy myself while Trump disintegrates the world.
Oh.
I will not even talk to his supporters again. There are some things Trump and I agree on, but there are some things we'll never agree on. Mm-hmm. Take, for instance, traditional African values, the sanctity of marriage and things like that. Yes, we might agree on, but he himself has not kept his marriage in that line of fidelity. The same man that slept with a porn star while his wife was pregnant, isn't it? Okay, moving on. But as regards this, isn't it funny that Trump is talking about Guantanamo Bay, putting immigrants in Guantanamo Bay? And that's why, please, I beg the Nigerian government, go get our over 3,000 people home so that they don't put them in Guantanamo Bay. Isn't it shocking they were talking about Guantanamo Bay just 2 days after the 80th anniversary of Auschwitz? Mm-hmm. Guantanamo Bay, where waterboarding happened,
yes,
which was simulated drowning, where the whole world condemned the human rights approach of America. Another question is, how is Trump even going to pay for all of these detention facilities for immigrants? It's said to be over $60 billion in money. They have to give contractors money to build new detention facility. This is immigration thing is going to cost him a lot of money. Then the man has started to flip-flop. The whole world told him, you don't just free spendings like that in America. He says, no. Like the Yoruba say, Ofa, Kekori.
Well, he's rescinded it now.
But guess what? He flip-flop. 2-3 days down the line, he's rescinded everything. So didn't he get counsel in the first place? And look at what he's done again. A conspiracy theorist par excellence, RFK. The part that even shocked me the most was the fact that Vermont senator asked him a question. Is healthcare a fundamental human right?
Right,
he couldn't answer.
He couldn't say yes or no.
He couldn't say yes or no. He gave a very warped analogy by saying that, if you see somebody that smokes 20 packs of cigarettes a day and they get sick, the healthcare shouldn't take care.
Why
it is not everybody that smokes that gets cancer.
Right.
We are just saying it's a causative factor of cancer.
Right.
So you can see the warped conspiracy theories he couldn't account for. And this is the kind of leadership this far-right person Trump brings to the world. And a lot of people say, swallow it hook, line, and sinker. And for those that argue that the American people voted him, so don't talk. Didn't Nigerians vote Buhari? Didn't they regret voting Buhari afterwards?
Well, we'll see. Hi.
You're laughing. Yeah, so the people that give those arguments, did they regret voting Buhari after? So this argument of the American people voted Trump. It doesn't hold water.
Okay.
They voted Buhari and
he hasn't spent a month yet, so maybe some people are not regretting yet.
Enjoy the action film.
All right. So, okay, on a sad note, because I woke up this morning to the news of the crash between, or the collision between the American Airlines regional jet and the military Black Hawk. Very sad one there. For accidents like that, it's very difficult to be able to have survivors on there, because when the collision happened, in air, the plane exploded and then landed in Potomac. A number of things to say. At first, from the human angle side of things, like you rightly pointed out, the flight which was coming in from Wichita in Kansas had almost landed in Ronald Reagan National Airport in Washington, D.C. However, just a few minutes to landing, that helicopter collided with it. In fact, some people who were already waiting for their loved ones at the airport had said they'd received texts from them aboard the plane to say that, we're going to be landing in about 20 minutes, see you soon. And that's chilling to hear. In this kind of situation, it's difficult to begin to look at, because it wasn't a technical fault. It's not as a result, to the extent that we know, until investigations, and we get the reports from the investigations, negligence or lack of due diligence cannot be seen here. It is almost like a freak accident. It would be important to understand why there wasn't any communication, that there was a Black Hawk in training and it collided with the aircraft. All we know so far is that 18 bodies have been recovered from the Potomac River. It's freezing cold, so a lot of things working against getting, like you said, they're now just in recovery mode, as opposed to even giving hope to family members or people who are on board. We don't have names yet, 60 people on board, 4 crew members. But what we're doing is 18 bodies have been recovered. The river is freezing cold, but exploded, in the air. So most likely a lot of casualties had occurred even before the plane landed.
Absolutely.
But if you were going to look at a silver lining, even though it's difficult to see anyone, like I was saying to you earlier, that there was no choice for the pilot. would not have had a lot of choice in determining where or how to land because it was a sudden impact. So the fact that they were flying over the river at the time is almost a blessing in disguise, because the extent of the disaster, if it had been a crowded, because we're already close to land, would have been extra disastrous. We're great to investigate. This is something that's worrying. They had the Jeju Air. We were talking about a Max Air incident yesterday in Nigeria, and now we're looking at the United States of America for the mode of transportation that is said to be the safest as a result of how far in between the number of accidents and incidents that happen. Our condolences, of course, to all families affected by this.
Thank you.
Okay, let me start with Guantanamo Bay, also known as Gitmo, which has been on lease to America from Cuba for over a century. Even if the current president doesn't like the idea, and the royalty that is paid by United States is routinely rejected. Now, Guantanamo Bay became popular after the September 11, 2001 incident, as the place where suspects were kept. And then, of course, there were reports about, torture, about detention, about inhuman treatment. However, what many do not know is that Gitmo has a facility for migrant offenses. Mostly people from Haiti and Cuba trying to cross by the river are the ones that are kept there. Now, Trump says he's going to keep 30,000 persons he calls dangerous criminals, worst of the worst, people who will be hard to deport. What is his justification? His justification is that some of these people that we're deporting, almost about 1.7 million illegal migrants, that if they go to their countries, they could find their way back. But that if he sends them to Guantanamo Bay, they will there's no way they can get out. Now, we have migrants being treated like terrorists.
Yes.
Is that fair?
It is not.
The president of Cuba says that this is an act of brutality, and I think he is right in saying so. Now, President Trump has signed a presidential memorandum. It wasn't an executive order initially. Now, if you look at it from a moral point of view, I don't want to complete that line of thought. Does President Trump has the moral right to declare anybody a criminal just for being a migrant?
Like, if we look at it critically.
Shots fired.
Before anybody can be declared a criminal, these people have not been taken to court. There's no record of conviction against them. And he thinks he has a moral right to say somebody is a criminal. I don't know. I don't want to extend
It's only a criminal that knows a criminal.
Peter Hegseth, who is now defense secretary, now says they are going to expand the facility to keep people there. I hope the international community will see how this in itself is a violation of the rights of persons under international law. As for RFK Jr., 5 major issues. Yes, Senator Bernie Sanders raising the issue and then confronting him with the evidence of the children health defense that he used to chair. He said no, he has removed himself from it. He denied being an anti-abortionist. He says he's just asking for better scientific projections.
Or even being in support of abortion beforehand.
He says he's not an anti-vaccine person and that he's not a conspiracy theorist. He says when he was asked questions of food industry, he said, well, he wants to make America healthy again. That's why he's talking about the anti-obesity epidemic. So, I mean, he tried to, make himself look very innocent. But the thing is that there were protesters outside, and then you see that the Democrats were very harsh to him. But the Republicans were applauding him, particularly when he spoke about the food industry in America. It's a very important position as secretary, but he might well get confirmed, because you already said he will need 3 Republicans to vote against him. After all, Peter Hegseth, with all the attacks on him, still went through.
He did.
The more interesting point about RFK Jr. is that even beyond the confirmation hearings, Maria Shriver, his cousin, and Caroline Kennedy, They are both out there saying that he's a predator, he is this and that, he had drug addiction problems, but whether that will matter or not.
We'll find out when the votes come in.
But the confirmation hearing continues today.
It does.
Yesterday, it was Finance Committee. Today, it will be Labour, it will be Education.
Agreed.
And other committees. So he's likely to face even
more scrutiny.
Questions today.
Let's move on to papers. Hopefully we'll have some time to continue talking about all of these different stories. But let's take a look at the front page of This Day. This Day leads this morning with the Federal High Court in Lagos setting aside an order of Mareva injunction, which had frozen the assets of General Hydrocarbons and its directors. As we said, Justice Dikolu had ruled that the Mareva injunction was in violation of a prior order from a court of concurrent jurisdiction. Now, the New Telegraph leads with the explosive scenes from the PDP's BOT, their Board of Trustees meeting in Abuja on Wednesday. Now, acting national chairman of the PDP, Umar Damagum, said the crisis rocking the main opposition party is being fueled by leaders who should be uniting its members. The Daily Sun also reports on the meeting. Its headline, PDP camps fight dirty over secretaryship. The Punch also wades in on this situation. If we take a look at the front page of the Punch, if we do have it, it does of course, touch on this situation. The Daily Trust also wades in with comments from the chairman of the Board of Trustees of the PDP, Senator Adolphus Wabara, who has called for unity as he insists the party's National Executive Committee meeting, which is scheduled for February, must hold despite the ongoing leadership crisis. To the Daily Independent, and they're looking at the telecoms tariff hike. Nigerian Labour Congress says that it will stage a nationwide protest on the 4th of February and calls on the federal government, the NCC and the NASS to stop the implementation of the tariff hike. The Guardian leads with its special feature. Today is Neglected Tropical Diseases Day. Its headline says a spike in ailments pushes Nigerians' care funding gap to 8.6 trillion naira. Now, 165 million Nigerians need at least one care or the other, and the federal government has been accused of ignoring NTD-affected communities in critical program planning. There are also 3,000 Nigerians without multi-drug therapy as bureaucracy delays leprosy treatment, and eliminating tropical disease by 2030 will earn Nigeria $19 billion in productivity, according to the article. Now let's take a look at the front page of Ghana's Daily Graphic, which reports that Ghana has made progress in its debt restructuring efforts, with only 7% of its external debt, which amounts to about $2.8 billion, left to be resolved. Now, the remaining portion primarily involves negotiations with commercial creditors, and government is working to finalize agreements that align with previously established debt treatment frameworks. And Kenya, the Daily Nation of Kenya has a photo of the Democratic Republic of Congo's President Felix Tshisekedi, who is not taking part in that regionally brokered talks aimed at ending this rebel assault that we reported on in the key eastern city of Goma in DRC. Now, the Kenyan leader, William Ruto, had invited Tshisekedi and his Rwandan counterpart, Paul Kagame, to a virtual summit as corpses continue to lay on the streets of Goma following the heavy fighting. The United Kingdom and the I paper has Chancellor Rachel Reeves unveiling her plan to kickstart economic growth. Reeves has backed a third runway at London's Heathrow Airport as part of a fresh plan to get the UK's sluggish economy growing. In a speech to business leaders, the Chancellor said Heathrow expansion, which has been delayed for decades over environmental concerns, would make Britain the world's best connected place to do business. Those are your papers from around the world.
Real quickly, I'd like to talk about, the local stories. Tropical health is a big deal. I just hope we're able to get the funding. We're happy now, a lot of people are happy now that, okay, America has reversed this freeze on funding. But the truth is, we have to sustainably think the way forward on how to fund our health outcomes and a couple of other outcomes, and also things with antiretroviral drugs. At some point, PEPFAR will no longer be there. Yeah. It might not be Trump that will take it out totally. Somebody might just feel like, okay, America has spent over $70 billion trying to help the world with PEPFAR, or over $60 billion there, but God knows how much you've spent. Right. Let's take it out. Where are we going to be? And secondly, there's another damning report I saw in one of the papers this morning that talked about the fact that an international multilateral agency official rep was speaking. I was talking about the fact that only 66% of Nigerian girls complete junior secondary school. After junior secondary school, they stop their education. And that's a ticking time bomb we must look at. And I can understand why Tshisekedi will not attend that virtual meeting, because Paul Kagame is hell-bent on taking over that area. His reason is not going to prevail. There's an interview he did with France 24 last year. I was really scared at the things he said as regards that area. So I don't think common sense is going to prevail. In fact, even the opposition, the likes of Martin Fayulu and a couple of other people in Congo,
who many people think should be the president.
Are supporting Tshisekedi on this, are rallying around.
All right, so back home in Nigeria, and with regards to the PDP crisis, which has dominated a number of headlines for obvious reasons, the purpose of that meeting was hopefully to redress some of the issues that has plagued the leadership of the PDP. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like a resolution had been, reached. We saw some footage of the former national youth leader, Ude Okoye, from the camp of Samayawo, the national secretary, and how it was a show of shame for grown men who had gone for a meeting to reconcile. And a number of them had some things to say about this. But what I just remembered when I watched this and just followed up on the story was what Nasir El-Rufai said, that we talked about yesterday. And I said that, yes, you might not like the messenger, but the message in itself carried weight. Is it not now almost agreeing with what he said, that there are some people who are being sponsored in the opposition parties, PDP one of them, even the Labour Party, to destroy the party? He said the PDP was sponsoring people in the APC, but that there are people working at to destroy opposition, and that spells a serious concern for the strength of our democracy in Nigeria. We cannot afford to have a one-party state where we don't have strong opposition, people speaking on behalf of the people, being able to, hold the government to account. Those are one of the things that we look at when we look at a strong democracy.
Absolutely.
So that's really quite sad that they haven't been able to reach an agreement yet. There are a few things that have said that must be done in the initial for the PDP, to begin to move forward. One is this, the ambition of the presidential candidate in the 2023 elections, that perhaps it's time for him to step aside. There's also the conversation around the chairman of the PDP, Damagum, who is leader of the party, and the fact that this contest as to whether or not it should remain factions here, factions there, it looks like the party is in disarray, and they ought to be perhaps the strongest opposition party, unfortunately not playing that role, and I don't see how a recovery is going to happen anytime in the near future.
Okay, very quickly. Congo. The M23 rebels, they virtually tightened their grip on the city of Goma, the second largest city in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. It has also been firmly established that this M23 is supported by Rwanda, particularly by President Paul Kagame, and the weapons that they use are from Rwanda, and that M23 recruits are trained by Rwanda. That will be the strongest reason why President Felix Tshisekedi refused to attend the meeting that was called yesterday by President William Ruto, who is the current chairman of the East African Council. Now, what is the situation? It's a major blow to the Congolese military that they have taken over the whole of Goma, Eastern District, which is very rich, as we have established, in a number of mineral resources, beyond the ethnic dimension to the issue in terms of the Tutsis-Hutu age-long conflict. Now, where is the international community in this regard? The UN has called for a ceasefire. The United States has called for a ceasefire, but the international community will need to wake up and prevent the blowout that is about to happen in Congo. Now, the protesters yesterday in Kinshasa were attacking embassies because they were accusing the international community of inaction. In other words, to prevent a blowout in DRC, the international community will have to do more beyond statements by the US and the United Nations. Quickly, Rachel Reeves, our budget is not working. It has driven up borrowing costs.
It's true now.
It has driven up borrowing costs. The CBI, Consolidated Business Industry, has said, look, they will have to lay off staff because it is not possible to function under this budget that is talking about tax rises and cuts in public spending. Now, Rachel Reeves is adamant. This is the whole point of the story about Rachel Reeves. She is saying that, in fact, there may be likely tax rises and spending cuts in March if the economy does not improve. Nobody sees how that economy will improve. The latest harebrained idea that she has come up with is to say, well, a third runway in Heathrow will help the situation. The chairman of RENAI, Michael Oliari, says in fact that third runway, they cannot finish it until 2025. Yes, it will take a long time to do it. Meanwhile, there are climate challenges.
Yes.
The UK has climate obligations. Right. By 2030, it's not going to work. And that's why Ed Miliband, the energy secretary, is opposed to it. And he has even said, well, if government is supporting the idea of a third runway, he's not going to resign because of that. So there's a lot of chaos around the budget plans of Rachel Reeves. Will she end up worse than Liz Truss? Perhaps.
Probably, yes.
Well, Rachel, we're rooting for you. Let's see what's going on.
I'm rooting for Rachel.
Well, let's see. Okay. Let's see what's going to happen. In all seriousness, I do think that she has entered. In all seriousness, I do think she has entered a financial situation in the United Kingdom which anyone would struggle with. No. I do believe that there was a hole there, and I do think that she is being treated unfairly at this moment.
So let's just. Femi, people like Keir Starmer lied during the debate. I said this thing here.
My question is, if there was anyone else, if there were anyone else,
he shouldn't have taken the job there. Why did he take the job?
But we often say that about
why did he take the job?
When you get in, you understand the scope of the problem.
Correct.
So don't give us excuses. Give us solutions. I meant to have come in with solutions.
She says she's optimistic.
We remain optimistic about Rachel.
Always.
Thank you so much, Adifemi. Always good to have you on the show.